much for coming on the Mindful Parenting podcast for an on-air coaching call. I'm excited.
Yes, I am too. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, so I think the way this will work is we'll find out about you and your family, then I'll ask you about some of your wins, and then we'll go into the challenge, okay?
Okay.
So just tell me a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah, so I live in Colorado with my husband, Adam, and my two sons. Noland is 7 and Hudson just turned 4. We also have a dog. And I own a photography company, so I work for myself. Noland is in 2nd grade and Hudson is in preschool part-time. And my husband, Adam, is a builder here in Colorado.
Cool. All right. Awesome. And that sounds lovely. Colorado, you already told me before this, you have 3 inches, 3 feet. Sorry, 3 inches. I'd be excited about 3 inches.
Yeah.
You have 3 feet of snow outside. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, cool. And then what are some wins that you have? What are some wins that you can acknowledge?
Well, I love your teaching. I've read your book. I have your newer everyday book that I do look at. And so the mindful meditation, I've been trying to incorporate that into my morning routine. I can usually get a couple minutes in every day. So yeah, that's been really nice. I do find that it has calmed me and helped with my reactivity for sure with my boys. And it's been great. And I've done a lot of like different reading and studies of parenting stuff. I've done the Love and Logic courses and really love that philosophy, which kind of coincides with your philosophy. And I would say that a lot of things are working really well, like using I statements, just trying to have reflective listening, trying to rephrase things in a more positive manner and not being so demanding in the way I phrase my sentences when trying to ask my boys to do things. Certainly it's easy with the toddler to give choices because that's a really simple thing of like, do you want to put your coat on in the kitchen or in the mudroom before we leave the house? Or do you want to use the potty now or in 5 minutes? That kind of stuff works really well. Both of my boys are awesome, energetic. And so there's challenges there, but there's been a lot of great things that I think have been super helpful for our family.
Awesome. Wow, that's great. So you're doing some meditation, you're doing some I statements, you are reading and practicing, and that sounds amazing. You're practicing reflective listening, you're practicing to be less demanding. That sounds awesome. Like high fives.
Thank you.
I'm like air high fiving, Rebecca. That's so cool. That's awesome. That all of this and you know, with their 4 and 7, like all this work that you've been doing at this time, I bet I know it's like you put in the early work, it pays off dividends down the road. I know.
That's what I'm hoping.
Sure. So, trust me, it will.
Okay.
7 and 4. 4 is such an energetic age. Oy. Okay. So what's going on? What are the challenges that are happening?
So the challenges, I think, are siblings. You know, it was different with my 7-year-old when he was almost 4 is when we had Hudson, my youngest. And so up until that point, I feel like all of these teachings were super easy to implement because there was only one. And then you add another one. And now that the 4-year-old is 4, he's really involved, you know, in life. He's not a baby anymore. And so he's playing and interacting. And the 7-year-old is very energetic. And that energy is awesome when they're playing and things are going well, but it can kind of quickly turn, or it can be during an inappropriate time. Like, for example, I had this morning where he is just full of energy first thing in the morning, and he wants to wrestle and goof off and run down the hallway, and the 4-year-old will totally just follow and wants to do whatever Big Brother's doing and will be involved in all of it. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking and we need to get to school. And so like this morning, neither of them got breakfast because the breakfast came and breakfast time went and they still were not ready. Um, Luckily, there's not like a big outburst about that, because this is something that's kind of like, hey, breakfast clock is on. You come down and you have time, then you can eat. But if you don't, then you don't get it. So it's not like we have some crazy temper tantrum about that rule, but it is hard for me to stay calm when I know that this is what's going to happen. And it's also just like, I'm not really sure how to help the 7-year-old use that energy for focus on what needs to get done instead of silly time, which we just don't have time for in the morning with our one little hour before school.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So that getting ready, getting out of the house, this is a very common problem, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot going on there. Okay. So tell me, what is your normal routine and structure?
So typically my older son's alarm goes off at about 6:45. And if the 4-year-old Hudson is not awake, then Noland is really good at focusing. He'll get himself up, he'll get himself dressed, he'll get himself brushed, and then he's ready to come downstairs. This morning, Hudson was up at 6, and so by the time Noland woke up, Hudson was already awake and the playing starts. Um, so it just kind of depends on what, how the day is unfolding in the morning about if things are going to get done quickly and focused, or if things are going to get wild. And it also is just like Monday, that can sometimes derail things of just getting out of that weekend where you could just wake up and play. And now all of a sudden you have to wake up and focus.
Yeah, Monday's
Um,
hard.
yeah. So, yeah.
I feel that on Monday. And when do you have to be out of the house?
Oh, so we have to be walking out the house at 7:55 to get Hudson to school first and then to get Nolan to school on time. And we've been trying really hard to be timely with Nolan. That has been a struggle with him not being late. So we've kind of set up some rewards for him that if he isn't tardy at school for the next 2 weeks, and we've been doing this for the last couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, he'll get a pizza movie night, and he's really excited about that. So 7:55 is like the very last minute we can walk out that door. It really should be a little bit earlier than that to get everybody on time, especially with 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, I imagine. And you got to deal with a car, you got to deal with, or whatever. I mean, I met most people are driving. Okay, at 6:45, out the door at 7:55. Breakfast time is, I'm a little worried about the teachers where your kids are coming and they're going to be like, I'm starving, help.
I know. I mean, Nolan had a banana before he left,
Okay,
and they do have snack time. And this is kind of
okay.
where I'm like, I do know that they're going to get fed
Yeah, yeah.
within an hour or two of being at school, especially
Okay,
the
okay.
4-year-old. They have tons of snack times.
Yeah.
Um, and he did have a banana, but it was like the oatmeal that I had made that they had wanted and asked for. They didn't get to have. So usually, we got to be putting shoes on at 7:45, just because it takes a good 7 minutes for them to put all their winter gear on and their shoes and actually be walking out the door and in the car at 7:55. So usually, breakfast time has got to be at like 7:30. They feed the dog before they leave. They've got to get dressed and brush their teeth. Usually they do that before breakfast. And that's kind of my requirement, is like, all your stuff has to be done. Your backpack's got to be packed. The dog's got to be fed. You got to be dressed and brushed before you can have breakfast. Because if we have breakfast first and that
Yeah.
takes a long time, suddenly we're really against the gun for getting out the door on time.
Yeah,
So,
the banana can be eaten in the car. the,
yeah,
the dog can't be fed in the car.
exactly.
uh,
And you don't want to
all
be
right.
naked going to school
No,
in
no,
this
no, no.
weather, let me tell you. Even without your coat, it's cold. So,
Okay, so it sounds like, what I'm hearing here is like you have you're using skillful means, you're practicing to keep yourself less reactive, you're practicing to use skillful communication. This is all awesome. Sounds like what I'm hearing is that maybe the structure and the routine of the morning maybe needs some tweaking here. Does that sound fair enough?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds a little tight to me.
Hmm.
Does it feel like that to you?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because last year it was 7 a.m. that he woke up. And so this year we moved it back to 6:35 was his choice, and that was working really good. And then he felt like he could give himself 10 more minutes of sleep because he was doing such a good job at the
Hmm.
focusing and getting ready. So, it's not like this has been a problem every day this year. Things have gotten better from last year, and we've just, it's more just that energy of like, we need to play.
Mm.
Sometimes this happens about getting ready for bed too,
Mm.
where it's just like their focus is we want to play and be goofy and be energetic. And
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're feeling good about the structures. You're even involving Nolan in like the figuring out of the routine and structure, which is really smart, right? Like to give him some ownership of it.
mhm,
That's also a real win for everyone who's listening who isn't doing that. That's a good idea too.
yeah.
Um, but kind of like how to kind of remind him and kind of get him on track when when the play is happening. I mean, yeah, I guess I would you know, I would think about ways to maybe allow more space and beef up the structure.
Hmm.
Like, I always thought I never did this, but I always wish I had, which is like, kind of like make a picture chart of like, these are the things we need to be done that you could like maybe even, laminate and have a wipe off thing and be like, okay, have you checked off the 4 things you need to do? And then you can play if you have time. You can definitely play. But if you haven't, we don't have time to play, right? So I always think something like that is good. I know that works well for people.
Hmm.
So those structures and stuff like that. So I guess I would encourage you to let's talk about like ways to kind of communicate it because that's where we can work. But also maybe talk with everybody about, hey, are there ways that we can make it easier to remember that it's a school day, that it's a weekday, and so that you can rely on these other things more than you so much. Like one of the things that we did um, was, there's all those timers too. There's the big time timer. You can get like an 18-inch one and it shows red. It's like a big, bright. Have you ever seen these? It's like
Just the little timers.
Oh, they have ones that are like 18 inches that they have for schools.
Oh, wow.
And so you could do that and there are like there were I'm sure they're so much more sophisticated now, but there are apps that will do a countdown timer out loud for you on your phone
Mm,
so that you're not the one saying 5 minutes to go, three, that kind of thing. And you could set it for maybe, 7:45. I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt to get to school 10 minutes early, right? Like if it just so happened.
yeah.
Um, yeah, set it for 7:45 and then you have this thing counting down. So those are some other things that you can do. And it goes like, there are ones you do whatever, half an hour to go, 15 minutes, that kind of thing. So as when you think about that idea of like kind of some of the structures and the spacing, did any of these sound good to you, or does anything else come to mind that you can think of?
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, what I try really hard to do is to not constantly remind
Yeah.
because that makes me crazy. So I kind of do like the one, like, I wonder if you guys are getting yourselves ready the way you need to be, or something like that as a statement before a lot of time passes. And then I kind of like just let them do their thing. Yeah, the timers are great. We have a timer that we set, but it doesn't have the countdown aspect, which especially for the 4-year-old, I think is really important because he can't read the clock.
Yeah.
And they don't have a concept of time at that age. So maybe something that's a little bit more visual would be nice. We've done the chart before and maybe we just need to reintroduce it. They get kind of sick of it and it
Yeah.
stops being effective.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a good time for us just to have another one because we've talked about how like this is why you're getting up early is so that you guys have the time to play because we were finding that they just need it, they need to interact with each other.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to revisit that. I guess another struggle in that realm would be that sometimes it turns a little too violent and then
Mm-hmm.
like the 4-year-old inevitably ends up getting hurt and crying. So kind of curious about your thoughts about like maybe language around that for me, to help with the two of them. And I don't want to start creating this bully and victim mentality between the two kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The 7-year-old's a lot bigger. The 4-year-old is 4. Inevitably, that's kind of the way it goes. This idea of like retaliation seems to be happening a lot, where if
Oh,
one
no.
gets, like the 7-year-old gets hit, he can turn around and hit the 4-year-old. He won't cry, but the 4-year-old cries, because he actually gets kind of hurt by it. So just trying to maybe how to
Yeah,
deal
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
manage
yeah.
with that in this chaotic time.
Okay, all right. So structures, timing, that's one thing. Let's talk
Yeah.
like how to wrangle the crazy boy energy that's
Yes.
happening, right? They
Yeah.
want to play. All right. So you were saying this morning, like Nolan and Hudson are just playing, and they can get rough and things like that. How do you normally approach them when you're like in a situation like this? What do you say?
Well, the truth is, I kind of let them suss it out themselves for the most part. And then something might happen and Hudson will get hurt, and then he'll come to me and be sad. That's kind of my struggle point where I'm like, oh, wow, that sounds like that really hurt, or that's made you sad. And then Nolan usually jumps in and says, well, he did this first and he did that first. And that's kind of my stuck point is I never really know what the best thing to say there is. I try not to be blameful of the 7-year-old because that is true. Usually it takes two of them and they're both involved in this issue. A lot of times I let them suss it out because they are playing first. And so I might not be in the room with them and they're sounding like they're having a great time. They're laughing and then, it gets taken a little too far.
So yeah, you would like to be able to maybe jump in right before there's violence, but yeah, it's probably happening so quickly, and you don't want to like hover over them. You want to let them play and work it out, and you got stuff to do. It's the morning. You got things to do, right? So you're not gonna, yeah. I mean, I think it's much better to not sort of hover over them. Have you had talks about hitting and violence and things like that outside of these moments?
Definitely. And, my favorite phrase is it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hit.
That's great.
So I kind of repeat that one a lot. I think I might have gotten that from one of your podcasts, actually.
Sounds like something you'd hear
it's
here.
it's a good one. I really, really like it. I put it on my phone as a reminder. And so, and yeah, we've had at length talks about retaliation and how that's not okay. We've got to use our words. We've got to try different methods. One thing I noticed is like my 7-year-old, he'll get activated and he'll kind of have that look on his face. And so I know it's coming and I'll be like, wow, you look really frustrated right now. I'll be like, how about, can you just take a deep breath? But like nobody, when they're activated like that, wants to hear your deep breath guidance,
No,
even
no,
though it
that
would be the best thing for them to do. It's like not the right time. So he looks at me, and then he's like even more aggravated with me because I'm like telling him to or suggesting to take a deep breath at that time. So
Well, it's
I
funny
don't
because
know.
when you said that, like, oh, it sounds like you're really frustrated now. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, go. And then
Right.
you said, why don't you take a deep breath? And I was like, oh
No.
no,
Yeah.
because it's like,
Just
yeah, if anyone said that to you when someone says that to me when I'm really angry, I'm just like, I want to murder you.
yes,
Just leave
of
me alone.
course. Of
Yeah, of course
course.
they are. So yeah, it's hard to. So it sounds like maybe like there's a one sort of action point and practice point for you is to stop the advice from rolling out of your lips
Absolutely.
after the
I'm like lost
acknowledgement.
at what to say, You look really frustrated and then I don't know what to say.
Yeah, then you just shut up. You shut up. That's all. You just you look really frustrated and then you leave space and let him
Mm,
say what's happening, right? What is the annoying thing that his little brother Hudson is doing? And listen, because
mhm.
that's what's going to deflate the energy bubble of that is like you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're acknowledging it, right? Just like that name it to tame it works for us internally, it also works for everyone else. Wow, you're really frustrated. Yeah, he did this, he's so annoying, but whatever, right? Like he says all these things. um but yeah, that would be a good for that moment. But we're talking about a moment where maybe they've both already kind of gotten
Right.
frustrated or
Yeah.
hurt, and you've got to get the morning back on track.
Right.
Okay. All right. So when they come and one's been hit, what do you say?
I mean, usually I just give them a hug and be like, ow, that sounds like that really hurt. Um, and then
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at a loss of like, because then usually Nolan chimes in and says, well, he did this to me, or he's a liar, or I didn't hit him, or something like that. This
Okay.
morning when that happened, Nolan said, well, that's not true. He did XYZ first. And I said, well, that doesn't sound very empathetic. And that was about as far as I
Okay.
got.
So yeah, so we're really getting into kind of like picking apart the nitty-gritty here with you, Rebecca, because overall you're really doing great. Like you're
Oh,
very skillful in so many ways. But
thanks.
let's get into some of the places that aren't so skillful. So yeah,
Yeah,
like you're really not being very empathetic. There is a little like shamey, blamey kind of stuff, which is very normal, natural stuff for us to come out of our mouths because that's just what's in the world, right? So
yeah,
I am not trying to shame and blame you for shamey, blamey talk because that's just the way people talk to each other in the world we live in. So, you
it's
know,
true. Yeah.
forgiveness and all that for that. But so you come and they come, they're upset, or you go up there and you get the hugs for the one who's been hit and crying. I maybe got the little one in one arm. Oh, you're really upset. This hurt. Yeah. And then Nolan says, but blah 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 blah. So this is where you have a chance to kind of like what you want to kind of do is really sort of position yourself as not the one who's going to solve the problem, but like the one who's going to help everyone get regulated, and that's really your goal there, and maybe like the mediator a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like
Yeah.
you're a coach
Mm-hmm.
sort of. So you comfort Hudson who's crying. Nolan says, but he's a liar, he did this and that, and you say you again, this is when your kid is talking to you, he's upset, so you can reflectively listen to that. You're really upset. Sounds like you got upset when Hudson did this, and I'm hearing, you both have a different story. I'd like to listen to each of you, right? And so you want to kind of get the point across that you're here to listen, to be a sounding board for each of them. And that's going to be challenging. That's going to take some practice for you. You'll
Mm-hmm.
have plenty of moments of practice.
Yes, I will.
But yeah, so you want to say to them, I'm here to listen to you, and your point at that point is not to be judge and jury, is not to actually you don't. I wouldn't worry too much at this point about what exactly is the real thing that happened
Yeah.
necessarily, but to just really be a listener for each of them, because and why you want to focus on being a listener is that as they speak it, you reflect it back. Oh, so you saw, he did, your brother did this and you didn't like it when this happened and that made you upset. That provides clarity for them. And then what you can do at some point is you listen to Nolan. Okay, I'm going to listen to you too, Hudson. I'm going to listen to you too. Hang on, I'm going to listen to you. Go ahead, Nolan, tell me what you're saying. And you reflect back, and then you say, okay, thank you. I'm gonna hear from your, I want to hear from your, that sounded upsetting. I can understand why you got upset. I'm gonna hear from your brother, Hudson. He tells you what's happened. Okay. And so what you then say says something like, it sounds like XYZ happens. You sort of reflect back, describe what happened as you understand it in a non judgmental way, right? And as with the least shamey, blamey way you can. So, sounds like Hudson, you guys were playing and running, and then Hudson uh, poked you with his whatever, and that got you upset, and you hit him or whatever. Does that sound clear? Am I getting it right? And if you're not, they'll correct you. So basically, the idea is to take, this is why we want more padding in your morning.
Yeah.
Because this stuff inevitably happens. And actually, for the listener who's saying, this sounds like this is going to take forever, or you, Rebecca, was saying, this is going to sounds like it's going to take forever. It's actually probably going to take a lot less than the big upset will
Mm, right.
ultimately.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets faster and faster as time goes on. You get better at it. But you take a few minutes, you pause everything and take a few minutes and say, okay, I'm listening to you. I listen to you. Sounds like this happened. What can we do about this next time this happens or in the future? Or maybe you even have that, maybe you have that, what do we do about it next time we, in the car, you have that talk. You say, okay, oh my gosh, this is a mess. Is everyone okay now? Hug, hug, hug. Let's breathe, finish getting ready. We'll talk about this in the car, okay? So basically the whole the whole drive in that moment is to just get everyone down regulated
Hmm.
from being really up. So I'm going to just kind of pause there and kind of you tell me what you're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's definitely just kind of the nugget that I was missing was maybe some of the vocabulary with the being reflective of what happened or listening and then kind of sportscasting back like this is what
Yes.
I hear that you're telling me happened, okay, and this is what you're saying happened, like this sounds really hard, and then maybe not trying to solve the problem there,
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back to it. And a lot of times this isn't something they intentionally did. It's in the rough and
Mm.
tumble play of two boys. One does something the other one doesn't like and then turns around and kind of does something back. Um, so I feel like it's not like they're, really trying to hurt each other. Like that was not the intention, which is feels good to know.
Hmm.
It's usually just kind of like what can conspire or transpire when two boys are playing and one's much bigger than the other. So,
Yeah, and
yeah,
so then
so
this would also be a good thing to talk about later. Like this happened this morning.
yeah,
So even like later today in some kind of no problem zone when nobody's tired or hungry.
yeah, all the things.
Find that those 2 minutes of time. um, it might be good to sit down and say, "Boy, that was a mess this morning. This, you were upset because of this. You were upset because of this. I wonder what we can do, like if when you're playing, and maybe even to Hudson and with Nolan there. I wonder what you can do if you're playing and you get hurt, because sometimes when you play, you guys get hurt. What can you do about it instead of hitting back?
Hmm.
Instead of this idea of retaliation, what can we do in those moments and kind of have a win-win problem solving, a brainstorming session with them and invite them into the solution.
Yeah,
And you may
that
want
makes
to
a lot of sense.
guide them towards a like, come get me as part of one of the ideas that you could offer as
Yeah, I mean,
well.
something I do notice from afar is like a lot of times Hudson will start saying, stop, or I don't like
Mm,
that, or whatever. Like he is doing a good job at using his words, and because they're in a playful space, Noland doesn't always respect that
mm,
immediately. And so we have been trying to talk to Nolan like the first time someone says stop, you must stop. Like this is important. This is safety throughout your whole life. When dad yells stop because you're on your bike and there's a car coming, you have to know to stop. It's a big thing for my husband too, that like Nolan doesn't stop immediately when he hears that word. Now, if he was on his bike, it's one thing because I think he understands the safety of that. But when it's playtime, he doesn't take it as seriously, and he's just a very physical kid. So like he wants to keep wrestling. Um, and so I think we just need to maybe talk more about like the importance of that language. If Hudson is saying this, you need to be respectful of it immediately.
sure, you can talk about it and you can also practice it. So it's
Mm,
really great for all kids of all sexes to do rough and tumble play
mm,
because consent can be really taught in those moments, like, and the language of stop can be used and be really powerful. So like, like if you're tickling and there's a stop, like I remember when I was a kid, my dad tickled me. I loved it. And then he wouldn't stop though. I would be like, no, I'm dying. Like,
Yeah.
so with my daughters, I always stopped.
Yes.
Stop is what we want to do, right? We want to stop when our kids say stop. So they understand about consent, but also we vice versa. But yeah, that would be a great thing to practice, not just like in a talking to him, but to practice it in play,
Mm-hmm.
and also you could practice it in like a really classic game. Do you remember red light, green light?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be
Good
fun
one.
to practice as well. So, like, to kind of just, yeah, give him outlets for that rough and tumble play with you guys too, so that he can learn a little bit more, some of the play rules of the road.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think we could make that a fun game that I can kind of preface with, "Hey, we're going to practice this so that we can all be mindful when this is happening in other areas and other times of our day." So, um,
Yeah, and you could do like, rough and tumble plays games are so fun. You could do like, just try to get past me to the couch or and
yeah.
then you're over there or yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Tina Bryson and Georgie Wissen Vincent have a good book called The Way of Play, and it's about parents playing with kids to kind of create connection. And also Playful Parenting by Lawrence Cohen is a classic that's incredibly good for those kind of things. So I recommend those as resources. But yeah, like playing could be a good one to with them to practice that kind of bodily consent stuff. It sounds like that might be what they need most here.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
probably. Um, yeah, just because Noland he's just incredibly physical. And we have so many outlets for him, right? Like he loves hockey, so he plays hockey. We go skiing. I mean, they're out in the snow. It's definitely like I feel like giving them lots of opportunities. But he loves to wrestle that little brother, you know?
That's great. And it's great that they have a good relationship that's wonderful. I mean, that's like the best thing you could give a kid. It's like, it's a really good relationship with their sibling. Yeah. I mean, the other things, be great to like look for children's books that have like brothers that love each other, right? Like have those books around, look for movies or I don't know. It's a kind of a low time for like brothers in movies, I think. But I'm not seeing much. The boys aren't being represented super well right now in the
No, they're
movies.
not.
Uh, um, and yeah, but yeah, like talk about, do things like talk about like, team, our last name, and, being on each other's team and how lucky they are to have each other and, acknowledging some of that stuff out loud is great. It's like just creating the culture of your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a good time to try to help them with like I feel
Mm.
vocabulary? You know, I read or I listened to your podcast with Boy Moms
Mm.
author.
Mm.
Anyway, just like trying to be more mindful about getting them to talk about their feelings because that's a challenge with boys. And so is there a time, do you think, during some of this like reflective listening
Mm.
and some of that time where maybe something has kind of ruptured that has turned the play from fun to not fun anymore? Should I be trying to encourage any kind of language between them at that point? Or is that like not a good time to do that and
Yeah,
you want to do it later?
yeah. I wouldn't make it a teaching moment necessarily, but what you're teaching in the modeling in those moments. They're really powerful moments for modeling, and that's a really powerful moment to model feeling words because yeah, you want to acknowledge the feelings, and you just kind of guess at them, right? You can say, wow, you look super upset, or you were scared that this happened,
Mm,
or maybe it sounds like you felt embarrassed and this happened. So yeah, you absolutely want to use your feeling words in those moments. You want to acknowledge the feelings and maybe what's happening, but actually the feelings are the most important, right? Like that's really gives them the you see me, you hear me kind of thing. But also like you can this is a great thing to talk to hubby Adam about too, is to not only just hear you using words for feelings, but him using that too, like having that modeling of, you know, it's hard for us to remember this because we're so taught and cultured to not talk about things like difficult feelings or failures or anything uncomfortable like that. But it's really, really helpful for kids if, like, around the dinner table, you can talk about, I felt embarrassed today when this happened, or I felt worried today when this happened, and this didn't go my way, and it kind of was a mess, and now I have to fix it up, right? To like let them know our failures and our humanities so that they know that they can talk about all the things and they can try things and fail and they're still okay and accepted and all of that. So that is subtle, but that can be something that you guys can, encourage each other to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're kind of working on that in couples therapy. It's funny how you do all this stuff as a parent to your kids, like the reflective listening, all these good models, and then you don't apply them to your relationship with your husband. And you should. So that's the kind of stuff, yeah, because we don't use a lot of that language to each other. Like, I don't think I very often say to my husband, like, wow, I felt like really sad today about X, Y, and Z. We end up just kind of saying what happened in our day and not talking about how we feel about it. So I like that idea about finding space for that.
A nice structure for that that's been so helpful in my family is to use the rose, thorn, and bud. I think the
Mm,
Obamas did this. Like, learned it a long time ago. But like, yeah, like ask everyone what's a rose, thorn, and bud. And so the thorn is a place, gives an opening for somebody to acknowledge something that wasn't so good in their day and to talk about it a little bit more if they want to. They don't have to, right?
yeah.
And it gives everyone some sort of space and structure to do these things rather than how was your day. It gives us a little more nu- nuance to our answer.
Yeah, we play poop sandwich is what we call it.
Poop sandwich. What's that?
It's you got to say something good about your day, bad about your day, good about your day. So
Oh, that's
poop
great.
sandwich.
Poop.
And my
That,
7-year old just loves it. We have to do every night. We have to do poop sandwich and two truths and a lie before
oh,
he goes to
wow.
bed. And he thinks like because he is 7 and he's a bad liar. Luckily for me, he just starts cracking up when he wants to tell a lie. So he thinks it's really funny to do because he just starts to laugh.
Oh,
Um,
no.
but yeah, those are good games for that age for sure to like open some of that language up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Cool. Poop sandwich.
Poop
That's
sandwich.
perfect
There's a
for
new one for you. I think it's the same thing as a rose, bud, and thorn.
rose thorn and bud. Well, the bud is something you're kind of looking forward to. That's good,
Oh, okay.
but that's okay.
Okay.
It's just very slightly different.
Gotcha.
It's very good. Well, this is awesome, Rebecca. Okay, so just you're doing great. You're doing a lot of things. I love that you're using that calming and your meditation, your I statements. That's great. Um, and so we talked about this challenge, the boys fighting in the morning, um,
All the time.
all the time, all the time. And so like,
Wrestling, fun
yeah,
fighting.
yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of get, like the idea of playing some of this out can be really helpful because um, if you get practice with red light, green light, you can be like, red light, we got to go to school. You got like time
Yeah.
out, red light. Oh my God, freeze. Everybody freeze, right? Then like even like a run and freeze kind of thing can be good. Because then you can use the language of like red light or freeze in the morning and make it like more playful.
Mm-hmm.
If time is running out, you kind of have to stop the rambunctiousness a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can use some of that language then and then bring it into the day. But I would absolutely encourage you if it's, we talked about this morning, but if it's becoming a pattern, go back to that. Let's sit down and talk about it. The mornings are getting too crazy. What can we do? How should we kind of shift our structure and things like that. So
Yeah.
go back to have those conversation. All right, what do
Yeah.
you what well, through that conversation, what are some things you're going to take away from this?
Um, well, taking a little bit more time when the rupture happens to hear both of them out about what happened, to be kind of reflective about what they're saying and to not solve the problem and just be like, wow, that sounds really hard. And then maybe later having a conversation about how can we do things differently or what can we come up with that would be more effective and better for everybody involved. That's not just retaliation. Because I do think that's like one of the biggest challenges for my 7-year-old is he just turns around and wants to retaliate. And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about how like that doesn't work in the real world, like you get older and you start doing that, like it's going to cause real problems for him. So trying to figure out how to deal with that a little bit more in home. Certainly going to continue to rework our mornings if we need to and maybe incorporate some of like the things that we had been using, like the checklist about what we need to do to get ready, maybe giving them a little bit more time, maybe setting that timer or that alarm clock a little bit earlier in the morning so that they do have some playtime and play space. I love the idea of these games. Like I can envision saying red light on the playtime, green light, get dressed. Let's go as fast as we can to get dressed and like make that more of a game in the morning, but then also playing those games just regularly so that we can practice some of that respect of stop and consent and, the language that's being used to keep bodies safe. I know that they teach it a lot in preschool. I think by second grade, they're not talking about that in school at all. But I know that the preschool is playing some of those games too. So I feel like that would be a really good thing to do at home as well.
Awesome. Cool. I love
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for tomorrow morning.
You're like, bring it on. Here
Yes,
comes mama.
I got it.
All right. Well, awesome. I'm so glad you could come on the podcast and we could talk about it. Sounds like this family is great. I'm gonna picture you guys now in your backyard playing red light, green light, and the kids slipping and sliding everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And the 3 feet of snow. I'm a little jealous. It sounds fun.
Yeah. It is. It's definitely fun. I would like summer to be a little longer and winter to be a little shorter, but I love where we live. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for coming on.
yeah, thank you, Hunter. I do really appreciate all of your help and all your podcasts. So thanks for having me.